My dog shout out to my dog for being my mental health support.
Ugh, love a dad.
Not my dad, my dog.
Oh, I was like, that took a turn.
Yeah, no, not my dad. My dog, my pet has kept me alive.
Hello, friends, and welcome back to another episode of Pickles and Vodka, the mental health podcast where we talk about all the things we don't want to talk about in real life. Today is May 30th, and it's my 2-year soberversary. I've officially been sober from alcohol for 2 years as of today. I'm really proud of myself, but also, you guys know I struggle with imposter syndrome. You guys know I'm hard on myself, and I'm definitely feeling that today. I wrote an essay about it, about what the last 2 years have been like for me in recovery / sobriety, whatever you want to call it. I'll put the link in the show notes. But I really feel like the last 2 years, rather than kind of getting easier as they go, I feel like they've gotten harder in the absence of alcohol because I've been struggling with other things, food, substances, relationships, exercising, you name it. I feel like I'm still trying to figure out how to handle my emotions without hurting myself, without self-destructing. And I mentioned this in the essay, but basically the whole point was that I think the last 2 years have shown me that I really have the capacity to face such a destructive force in my life and overcome it. And so now that I've overcome alcohol, I mean, knock on wood, I never take it for granted or anything, but now that I've conquered that, I feel like I can finally start tackling my other demons in this 3rd year of sobriety. And by the way, I kind of don't know how I feel about the word sobriety. I feel like it's a very black and white term. I've said this so many times on the podcast before. I probably sound like a broken record, but I don't know. I usually prefer the term alcohol-free or like dry from alcohol or like sober from alcohol, I guess. But that takes a lot of words to say. And so when I say sobriety, just know that I'm strictly referring to sobriety from alcohol. Anyway. Oh, I also realized that I've been sober in Seattle longer than I've been drunk. I've now lived here for 3 years, and 2 of those years have been spent sober. And that's crazy. Especially when you consider that, I didn't drink at all during 2020, which is kind of a miracle. So I'm really proud of myself for that. I'm really fucking proud of myself. Patting myself on the back as I record this. But yeah, I'm really excited for today's guest. If you remember the episode I did a while back called A Light in Wild Times, number 34, I interview Lucy Sarah, who is the founder of a women's motorcycle campout in Pennsylvania. And it's just a really rad event where women from all over ride their motorcycles into the woods. And it's great for networking. It's great for having fun. It's just like a bunch of badass women empowering a bunch of badass women. So today's guest is someone that I met at that campout. Her name is Adele. And when we met, we immediately connected because we were both kind of like the wallflowers of our group. I'm kind of infamous for going to parties or events and always befriending the fellow quiet people because that's just how I roll. But that person in that situation was Adele. And we had a really great time getting to know each other. We have a lot in common. I remember we built a fire from scratch together and we were so proud of ourselves. So that was 2017. Since then, Adele has gone through a lot of really hard things that she talks about in this episode. One of them is the suicide of someone close to her. And just as a content warning, if you are triggered by conversations about suicide, maybe skip this one. But yeah, she's so incredibly resilient, and I'm so proud to have her on the podcast and to finally reconnect with her after the last few years. So before I jump into that interview, I wanted to make a couple of announcements, as they say, do some housekeeping, I guess. I'm really bad at that for this podcast. I have decided that I am going to start releasing episodes on a weekly basis again. instead of on a 2-week basis, at least for the summer. The reason I say that is because, well, in the beginning of the podcast, I was doing it on a weekly basis, but that quickly turned into like too much stress for me. And I just want the podcast to be like a healthy outlet and not a source of more stress. So I switched it to every 2 weeks. That's been the status quo for the last couple years. But this summer, I'm interviewing so many amazing guests. I'm just sitting on a ton of interviews. I want to get them out in a timely manner to you guys. And also, I've been toying around with the idea of doing more solo episodes since you guys liked the Bulimia Diaries so much. If you haven't listened to it, it's just a collection of my audio journals. You guys liked that so much that I kind of want to experiment with doing more of that. So yeah, throughout the summer at least, I will be releasing 1 episode a week, and it's super exciting. The other announcement that I wanted to make is, well, it's less of an announcement and more of a request. I have never asked this before, ever on the podcast, but I think if you want to help me out, you can go... Oh God, this is so hard to talk about. This is so hard to say. Like, how do people say this? Basically, I want you to rate and review the podcast. If you've been a fan of Pickles and Vodka since the beginning, or maybe you just started listening and you want to help me get the word out to more people, go to wherever you listen to your podcasts and just leave a little rating or write something nice for me, or maybe not. Maybe this podcast just makes you really depressed and you're like, don't listen to this. This is going to bum you out. See, I'm so bad at this. I can't even do it without like making self-deprecating jokes. Anyway, it would mean the world to me if you did that, because I want the podcast to grow. I want to be able to reach more people. I want to have even more guests on. And to do that, I need your help. I guess that's all I wanted to say. Oh God, I feel so embarrassed now for some reason. Let me see. I feel like there was more I wanted to talk about in this intro, but I have a job interview coming up. That's exciting. It's my first job interview in like 2 years, and so I'm really nervous, but super excited. I don't know how much of this I've talked about on the podcast, but I'm trying to make a big career switch from marketing to something in the mental health field. I want to help make a difference in some way, so I will keep you guys updated about that. But yeah. Again, if you like this episode and you want to help me out, go leave a little rating or a little comment and it will make my day. I promise you. Okay, here is the interview and enjoy. Hello.
Hello.
Hey.
Hi.
Oh my God, your face. I love your face. Oh, this is so emotional. Like,
yeah.
oh my God, it's been so fucking long. Like, so we
Yeah.
met each other. When did we meet? 2017?
Yeah.
We went to a motorcycle camp out together. We were strangers.
Yeah. Yes.
Like, I met up with this group of women that I knew from Instagram, and you were one of them.
Yeah.
And like, I feel like we immediately like connected on that trip.
Yeah, I don't know if we were even friends on Instagram before then. I just know
we
that
weren't.
Yeah, I know that I went up with like the other people from Richmond and like we were picking you up on the way and we are just like, yeah.
Yeah, so we lived in like the DC area at the time.
Yeah.
So now that the listeners know how we met, there's so much. Oh my God. Okay. Why don't you introduce yourself first of all? Like what your name is, where you live, what you do, that sort of thing, if you want.
Okay. My name is Adele Ball, and I live in San Francisco. Or actually, I live in Oakland, California. I don't live in the Bay Area. And I am a graphic designer, but I'm currently unemployed. So.
Samesies.
Yeah.
So you do a lot of stuff. When I met you, I believe you were teaching in Virginia.
Yeah.
So what led you to California?
Interesting question. I mean, it was kind of like, I don't know, dream of mine always to explore like outside of Virginia. I spent most of my life in Virginia. And I went to undergrad in California and Los Angeles, and like I like to ride motorcycles, and I like to go rock climbing and go hiking and backpacking. And there's just like a lifetime of places to explore out west. There's also a lifetime of places to explore back east, but
I feel that.
yeah, I just was like, oh man, it's so awesome out there. And I just was mostly curious, but there's a couple of like pretty intense events that happened that kind of like precipitated my leaving of Virginia. My former partner committed suicide, and like
Oh man.
Richmond all became like a pretty sad place for me. And I mean, like, I don't want to say like I ran away from that place, but I needed some space.
Yeah, for sure. I
Yeah.
don't blame you at all.
Yeah. So I had this dream to build a like tiny house camper van, and I renovated a 1995 Chevy G20 van into like a little camper van, which was a cool project. Actually, I worked on that project with my former partner's dad, actually. And that was like a very healing project and time in that summer of 2019. And I drove with my dog out west.
You have a dog
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, I
What's your dog's
do.
name?
My dog's name is Banshee. Yeah.
Oh my God.
I think I got Banshee like probably 3 months after we met or something like that. Like it was right around this in the same year.
Oh my God. So when you built the tiny home with your former partner's dad, was that after they passed?
Yeah, after he passed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. What was that? I mean, you said it was healing.
It was healing in the sense that like we didn't have really a relationship. Like Paul and I didn't really have a relationship. I actually
Paul's the
didn't
dad.
really like him. The dad.
Okay,
Yeah.
Paul's the dad.
Paul's the dad. I didn't really like him that much, honestly. Back when Sam and I, my former partner, had started dating, he just kind of like showed up for me, and in a time of need, like I really needed a place. I needed some help building this van, and he was like very accommodating and welcoming. And I think like for me, it was amazing it was cool to see like this person who's so similar to Sam, and then also to talk about it and like spend that like quality time with him. And I think for him it's really healing to strengthen our relationship and like teach me some skills that like I know that he wanted to teach Sam about like construction and shit like that.
Yeah. Oh my
And just like
goodness.
spend like hours just kind of like hanging and talking and like yeah, feeling like we're a family, you know.
That's so beautiful. I'm like, but also it sounds incredibly painful too. Like, was it
Yeah,
like since he was so similar to Sam, like, did you ever have moments where it was just too hard to continue?
totally. Or not too hard to continue, just like moments where I'd be like I'd have to like catch myself because I'd be like interacting with Paul in the way that I would interact with Sam, you know, like I'd kind
Yeah.
of like forget like who's who. Just their mannerisms are like the way they talk are super similar.
Do you still talk to Paul now?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah,
Oh, that sounds so beautiful. It's like something that Sam would really dig, I feel like.
I think so. Yeah. Who the hell knows?
Sorry, I feel like we're jumping into this
Yeah.
super like deep stuff right off the bat.
You know,
Which
like it's honestly like just how it has to come out. Cause like I couldn't
yeah,
say like why I'm in Oakland without like going to the beginning.
yeah,
And like talking about why I left Virginia. You know, it's a pretty like traumatic experience in my life.
yeah. I mean,
Just
how this is such a dumb question, but like, how are you doing now in this moment?
why is that a dumb question?
I don't know. It's like, how are you feeling? It's like, I'm
Yeah.
feeling like shit. Thanks for asking.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. You know, in this moment, in regards to Sam and the loss of, I feel okay, honestly. I spent a lot of time processing it, a lot of time in the van, actually. I spent a
yeah.
lot of time writing and like creating and thinking about it. Paul gave me some of his ashes and I duct taped them to the dashboard of the van. So we like, that was like always kind of like an amulet, for lack of a better word. There's like really strong, like kind of spiritual presence there. And I feel like I talk to that remains like a lot. I think like my head understands it and is accepting of it. My heart is like broken.
Yeah.
But okay. And like, I go through moments of like feeling like the intense, like somatic experience of that trauma. But I mean, the last time I felt that was weeks ago. Yeah. I'm okay. Yeah.
Oh my God. When I was in treatment recently, we weren't allowed to say okay. We weren't allowed to say okay. We weren't allowed to say fine. But like sometimes that's all you can say. You know, it's just like I'm alive. I'm here.
Yeah.
Like, I'm okay. Leave me alone. Like, let me use my words.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah. Oh my God. Okay, so you're living in Oakland. You are you just doing like freelance graphic design right now, or?
Yeah, I have one project that I'm working on and like just like small things for family, friends and stuff like that.
I wanted to ask you about your art and how it relates to your mental health, because like you talked about creating as a way to heal, and obviously you have the van, which is like monumental in your healing, I can imagine.
Definitely writing is a huge part of my artistic practice, and that's like a really helpful processing tool. So when I was in the van, I wrote like a monthly newsletter and I like kept a really intense set of journals, would write a lot every day, would kind of like craft this like poem / newsletter and like send it out via email to anyone in my circle who wanted to read it. And yeah, it's a good question. I mean, the van was a very creative project that was also very healing, like to build this like house and sense of safety with Paul was like super special. Full disclosure, when I moved to Oakland, I sold the van pretty much immediately.
Okay. Wow. What was that like?
Well, I sold it because it was my only car and I got this job. I had this job in the city, so I was commuting every day. And it was just like completely unrealistic to like, the gas prices in California are really expensive. The van gets like 8 miles per gallon. If I'm commuting like 20 miles a day, like it just really it's not feasible. And I accidentally like hit my neighbor's car trying to parallel park, like super low speed, which like did no damage to the van because it's like an old tank, but like ripped the bumper off of this car, like the plastic bumper. And like that night I like helped my neighbor like order the part and like help them fix it, and like just was like, I gotta get rid of this thing. And it seemed like it was like time to go for it, you know. A lot of people ask me like, weren't you sad to let that go? And I didn't feel sad about it, mostly because I felt really good about the person that I sold it to. Someone who really who's looking for something with the same specifications that I had built my van at, and like they needed like some secure housing, and
it worked out.
It just worked out. It just seemed
serendipitous.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and it served its purpose in your life, and it was there when you needed it. And I think it's really good that you knew when to let go. I don't know if I would be able to do that.
Yeah, I am surprised that I did when I look back on it now, but that it was kind of like being flexible and like being able to like kind of like move into the next thing when it appeared has been something that I learned since moving out here.
Well, I wanted to ask you a little bit, like moving backward to your earlier years, like, because was mental health talked about in your family? Like, how was that approached?
Not at all, actually. Not at all. I grew up in a household that only condoned good emotions, good, quote unquote, good emotions. So like, I wasn't allowed to be angry. I wasn't allowed to be sad. I wasn't allowed to experience pain. I wasn't allowed to like be, jealous or envious or like greedy.
What's left after all that? It's like, those are all the emotions I feel.
Yeah, I know. And like not allowed to be like competitive, just like,
Jesus.
or like the like envy and jealousy that's like laced into like competitive nature, my particular competitive nature. So like, and mental health was not talked about, like in my family, it was kind of like, we don't need therapy. We don't need mental health services. We don't need medication. That was kind of the attitude, which is super unfortunate because my dad struggles with severe depression. There was a period of time in my childhood where he was severely depressed, and it was never talked about. Like, he stopped going to work, stopped getting out of bed. My mom kind of like hid it from everyone, and we never talked about it. I don't even know what kind of treatment he received, if any. He went through another period of severe depression several years ago and was hospitalized and has medication that works for him. Still doesn't like therapy, kind of believes that it's like a thing that you only need for a minute, and then you can graduate or something. Like, you go through therapy like a program,
Yeah, that's really frustrating when it's like someone you love so much, it's so close to you, and like the help is right there, they just don't take it. And especially if they don't talk about it. Like, I went through a very similar experience with my mom when I was a teenager. She was abusing opioids, and like, I remember she disappeared for a while to like detox, and no one ever talked about it. Like, we kids were just kind of like pawned off on neighbors to watch us for a few days, and then like she was back and they were acting like nothing happened. And so I understand how frustrating that is, especially when you're not allowed to let out those emotions and you're just kind of like sitting with them. So like, how did they come up in any other way for you, the emotions?
I mean, honestly, I was pretty out of touch with my emotions for like most of my teenage years.
Okay, what how did that look like?
I mean, I remember I was out of touch with my emotions, and I would experience like extreme sadness and extreme anger, like, or like frustration, and not really understand like why. I engaged in self-harm, and I felt a lot of shame about that too, because like we weren't allowed to like express pain or sadness, and to me that was expressing some sort of like feeling and like some sort of pain or sadness. And
well, yeah, it's gonna come out.
Exactly.
If you stifle, it's gonna come out. Like, everyone, we're human. We feel pain, we feel sadness, and if you can't talk about it, like, I mean, self-harm is how a lot of people deal with that. Like, they have to how. I mean, I did it too. Like, expressing that pain because you don't have any other outlet.
Exactly. Yeah, I didn't have anyone to really talk to about it. I just had one friend who kind of understood. That was the only person I talked to.
Yeah, I was gonna ask about your support system at the time, and like whenever you eventually like left the household, like what kind of shift happened, like with your emotions and stuff.
I mean, when I left the house, I didn't have a support system. I had my one friend who I'm still really close with, and I remember talking to her about it in high school, like once or twice.
Yeah.
And when I left the house, when I moved out, I moved to Honduras and developed severe anorexia. So, I mean, I still didn't really feel my emotions, I don't think, at that time.
What was in Honduras? What were you doing over there?
I was doing service work. I was a little 18-year-old who was like super ambitious and was like, I'm gonna save the world in this highly problematic way.
Hey, it happens to the best of us.
Yeah. But like, I've like graduated high school, like fuck college, like I'm gonna like do humanitarian work. Like,
wow. I mean, that kind of surprises me that you were like, fuck college, because like, obviously you went back and, you taught for a while, and I consider you this very like academic person.
That's so cool, I guess. I spent a lot of years
it's like, school. I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah. I have my problems with academia as well.
Well, okay,
But
go back to Honduras though, and the anorexia. Like how, what was going on at the time?
what was going on at the time? I mean,
What's going on now?
what is going on now? Yeah. I think at the time, like I moved to this place that was like so different from anything I'd ever experienced. And I was like on my own for the first time and like having to really support myself in my emotional, like support my emotional self on my own. And like I had no school, I had no skills.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, you're just kind of like thrown out into the world and expected to find your way, but like you have all these emotions, you don't know how to get out. You, like you said,
Yeah.
you weren't given any skills, like you didn't really know what you were doing. Like first of
Yeah.
all, like who knows what they're doing right out of high school or now for,
Yeah.
you know.
Right.
When did the anorexia develop?
Pretty much immediately.
Okay.
And it's kind of always it had already been developing. Like I was already
Okay.
experiencing body dysmorphia and like was super kind of comparative with other people and other girls in my grade in high school and below me. And when I was living in my parents' house as a teenager, I was like watched pretty intensely. We weren't allowed to like, we always had family dinner every night. You
Yeah.
had to attend family dinner. You had to eat food, even if you weren't hungry. You had to eat all your food. And if you didn't, it was like a personal attack on my mom.
Yeah, it's like
Yes.
wasting resources.
Yeah. And also, she like took it personally, like, well, I'll never cook for you again. Like, because you don't like the way that I make this food, just
Oh
like,
my
whoa, dude,
God.
like,
So was the anorexia kind of like a rebellion against that?
um,
I mean, you've had years to think about it now. Obviously, at the time, you might not have known what you're doing, but like thinking about it
yeah.
now, what like,
Yeah. I mean, I think partially, like I was like, I can do whatever I want now. And like, I don't have to be controlled by other people on about what I eat. I'll just
wow.
control myself.
Did anyone like come like notice and talk to you about it?
Um, no one really talked about it. I would get comments from my roommates, like maybe you should eat something more, but no one really mentioned anything. Yeah. I mean, like everyone was kind of off in their own
Yeah.
it's trying to maintain themselves. And I'm not honestly like not really sure because I've suppressed a lot of that time.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, I get it. I have periods in my life that are just like blurry that I don't
Yeah.
remember. It's like that's trauma for you, baby.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. I'm sure that people mention stuff, but I'm sure that like I also just was like, like had really kind of like shut down.
How long were you in Honduras for?
I was there for 3 months.
Okay. Was it like like a mission trip or something?
It's kind of, yeah. It was associated with our church somehow.
Okay, yeah. I'm familiar with
Okay,
those.
so yeah. But it wasn't very like necessarily like Christian in the programming or anything like
Okay.
that. It's
Sorry,
just
I
like
was
a bunch
just
of like volunteers like living there like full time for like years. So
how did
I
that
think
experience affect like your decisions when you got back? Like, I mean, you did that and then you got back and you had to decide like what to do next.
mm,
Did that change how you viewed the world or like did it change what you wanted to do with your life or
yeah, it definitely changed my view of the world. Like I realized like just how much privilege I had grown up in. And like that privilege like kind of disgusted me upon my
Mhm.
return. Like
Yeah.
I remember I distinctly remember going to the supermarket probably with my mom or something and just being like, whoa, there's like so much random ass food here.
It's pretty wild if you've been to like a third world country or whatever, and then coming back, it's like you're shell shocked. You're
Yeah.
like, I am swimming in food right now. Like,
Yeah. There's like a whole like aisle devoted to cereal. I was just like, what the fuck?
how is that like with your eating disorder too? That must have been hard.
For me, I remember thinking a lot about how like my family existence was like so gluttonous.
Yeah.
Everything seemed to all of a sudden seem to revolve around food.
Indulgence.
So indulgent, and like I didn't deserve this, like.
Oh my God, yeah. How long did that last, like the eating disorder when you got home? Like what happened after that?
I mean, it was a little bit tempered because I moved back in with my parents. But so there's still like a requirement of like you have to eat, like going back to like these scheduled meals, basically force feeding. And like, so, I mean, which is like a pretty traumatic way to experience food, like
I never thought about it like that before, but you're
the
so
Clean Plate
right.
Club. Yeah.
Jesus, my family sung a song when we cleaned our plates.
Mm.
And now, like, I have bulimia and like binge eating disorder, and I really, really struggle to like, I have to finish my plate. I feel really guilty if I don't, even if I'm like
Yeah.
full. And like, yeah, I never thought of it as like traumatic like that before, but you're totally right.
Yeah. It's like you're being taught to ignore your body,
Yeah.
basically.
And that teaching can have far and wide negative consequences.
Yeah,
To
totally.
put it lightly.
Totally. Anyways, I live with my parents. This is like such a classic move. I ended up like getting like 2 jobs, so that I could just work all the time and like didn't have to like be home. So I like worked at a coffee shop and then worked like a babysitting job. So I was just like pretty much all hours of the day, like was like working and like didn't have to be home. I don't really remember much from that time period. I just know that I justified that because I was like, I'm gonna travel again. I want to go see my friend,
Yeah.
who's living in Spain, and like I want to explore, and like this is a way for me to save money. And it's like so justified, if I don't buy food, that's more money saved.
Yeah. And meanwhile, your emotions are just like getting pushed aside and like,
Right. Like I have
you're,
no recollection of what my emotions were at that
yeah.
time.
How old were you at the time?
18,
18?
18,
Okay.
19. Yeah.
So when did you end up getting back like into graphic design and that sort of thing?
After that year, I decided to go to undergrad, and I guess got into graphic design once I was in undergrad, my 3rd year of school.
Okay, so pretty late in the game.
Yeah, I knew I had always like I would always been attracted to like flat 2-dimensional super graphic, typographic, high contrast, just like really cool imagery, like
Yeah.
poster design, album covers, like so cool, book
Yeah.
design. And I went to the school that I was going to didn't actually have like a specific graphic design program. I just studied like studio art because also I wanted to go to school for graphic design. Like I wanted to go to art school, and my parents, who like in a beautiful way helped me go to college financially, like with a not so beautiful caveat of like you can go to the school that like will like that we approve of. So I wasn't allowed to go to art school. I had to go to a liberal arts school because they're like, well, you never know, like you might want to like study mathematics. Like no,
Okay.
I
Did they
don't.
even know
Yeah.
you?
I know. Exactly.
Oh my God. I see this constant theme in your life of just like your control being taken away from you and just like not having any agency in your life. Like, do you feel like that's accurate?
Oh, so accurate. And that's something I rebelled against so hard. And then
Yeah.
to this day, like the best way to get me to do something is like to tell me I can't.
I mean,
Because then
yeah,
I'm like, fuck you. Like, I will do that.
So when did you graduate school, first of all?
In 2012.
Okay. And like what happened after that? Like what was going through your head? How were you feeling?
I was like, oh, I mean, I just fallen in love with my former partner. So I was like, first love in my life. And I was just like, I want to do whatever. I'll follow you wherever.
Yeah.
So when I graduated, I moved back to Virginia.
did you feel like you began to regain control in some sense?
Mm,
Or do you feel like you kind of just shifted the control like over to your partner?
mm. Um,
Does that make
that's an
sense?
interesting question. Yeah.
I know. I mean, for me, I know it was kind of similar. Like had no control as a
Hmm.
young adult, and then my first relationship also was very, very strong, like first love, and I kind of just shifted all of that onto him. Like, you're my
Hmm.
person now. I'll do whatever you want.
Hmm. I definitely, I mean, like, I moved back to Virginia for Sam, for sure. I really wanted to stay in California, but I was like, I'll just go visit for 2 weeks. And then, like, 2 years went by, and I was like, whoa.
As it does
As
when
it
you're in
does.
love.
Yeah. And like being in love with him and dating him seemed like a little bit of a rebellion,
Why was that?
just because he was very different from like the people that I grew up around. Like I
Yeah.
went to like private school. There's a lot of like rich preppy kids. Sam grew up like in central Virginia, went to the public school, like didn't go to college, like had there was a class difference for sure.
Yeah.
And but also like he was like a real free spirit, in a way that like I learned a lot from, like about like being able to just like be myself and vulnerable and wild and kind of feral,
Yeah.
in a way that was like not allowed growing up.
Can you talk more on that?
Yeah, pretty much right after we met, like he was a really free spirited person, very like compassionate and accommodating, or like what could talk to like anyone, was not judgmental in that sense.
Sounds like the opposite of your experience growing up.
Growing up, totally.
Yeah, exact opposite.
Yeah,
But like healthy.
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, what's the purpose of that judgment? you know
Yeah.
I should ask my parents that.
Oh my God. Tune back in and we'll let you guys know how that goes. Oh my God. Can you
Exactly.
imagine?
Yeah.
Oh man. I've thought about having like my mom my mom's been on the podcast, but like I've thought about having her on again and like having a full on like argument, like conversation about like just bringing up difficult topics. I've
Yeah,
also thought about asking my therapist to be on. I just have no boundaries sometimes.
great.
So you started experiencing this feeling of just like being feral and free and
Yeah, and like not being judged for like who I was,
yeah,
honestly.
did that kind of dictate the course of your life? Like did you find yourself moving in a different direction than you had been before?
I mean, I think like it really tempered me, or like not tempered me. It really like opened me up, honestly. It really cracked me open. I remember experiencing like a lot more emotions. I think I became like a much more patient friend,
Hmm.
a much more present person.
Did you have problems being present before?
Definitely. I mean, like I would surround myself with like purposely surround myself with extroverts,
Hmm.
so that I didn't have to like show up any part of myself.
I know that's one thing we bonded over at the camping trip because like there were a lot of rowdy people and everyone is being loud and extroverted and we were just like sitting in the corner just like
Yeah. We're
talking
like,
about fucking art and like
yeah. Totally. Like trying to make a fire, just be like,
oh my
we'll
God,
just
yes,
chill
the
over here.
fire. We built a fire
Yeah.
from scratch and we were so proud of it.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's like
That yeah,
yeah.
that was a huge moment for me. I cherish that.
Same. I have this great picture of you like with your plaid, like your flannel, just sitting by the
Uh-huh.
fire, and it's such a good memory.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah. So, but when I met you, I saw you as sure, like introverted, quiet, but also a free spirit. And at the time, I think you might have been teaching. I'm not sure, but I don't know. I guess I saw you as very like you know what you're doing. You kind of have your life path figured
Mm.
out. You're following your passion. Like what was going on at the time?
Yeah, I mean, you met me in like a relatively healthy period of my life, sort of. It's hard to say. Like, I'm like, take that back.
Yeah. What is healthy?
As far as my struggles with like disordered eating goes, like I didn't, though I was relatively healthy at
It
that
was
point
in
in my life.
remission.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I went to grad school. I like kind of like woke up out of this like dream phase, like in this relationship, and was like, oh yeah, like I do want to be a graphic designer. Like that's totally what I want to do. I'm going to chase that passion. I applied to one school, got in, was just like, okay, here we go. That was a really intense experience. Like grad school will fuck your shit up.
Jesus. I can only imagine. I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
But like also how rewarding that you get to do that, you know, like after being told you can't go to art school, now you're fucking getting your master's and pouring
Yeah,
blood, sweat, and tears into this.
totally. I mean, it definitely just like kind of chipped away at the like foundations of like my sense of self. It's intense. Grad school, at least art school, grad school is really intense. Like your blood, sweat, and tears. It's hard to separate. It was hard for me to separate myself from the work. And like when the work gets criticized, like so do I. The work is me. That was really difficult. I mean, also there's just like ridiculous expectations in graduate school. I was literally told by one of my professors, if you're not staying up all night, you're not working hard enough. Which is like such a destructive thing to say.
Yeah, that's not healthy at all.
Not at all. Yeah.
Oh my God. I can imagine you got out of that a little bit traumatized.
Absolutely. Yeah. A little traumatized. I also, you know, like right at the very, very, very end, I figured out like there's like a bit of a light, like the last month of grad school where I was like, you know what, like screw all of the things that I'm supposed to be doing. Like I just want to like learn how to make furniture at like my mentor's neighbor's house and like sew things and like really kind of like work with my hands a little bit more. And so that was a huge lesson from grad school. But also like there's just so much kind of like mental gymnastics on my part that I think I was really struggling with my sexuality and my gender identity, and I was trying to like be okay with being like a woman, which is like a word that I like don't like now to describe myself. But I was like really trying to be like, it's okay to like be a woman, like let's explore what that it means and see if I can like make it fit, which I didn't, you know.
Have you been feeling like that your whole life?
Yeah, I have. I mean, I've always been a tomboy. My parents tried to have a tea party for birthday party for me, like with all the other girls in like my kindergarten class, and like there was like dolls and shit. And like as soon as the parents went inside, I like rounded up all of my friends and like went into the forest and like climbed trees. I was like, fuck this shit. Like I don't give a I got in trouble for that, actually.
Well, yeah, I mean, it sounds like you were raised with very traditional gender norms in your family, and that's
totally
really hard to break away from. And it's like when you first start questioning it, at least for me, like it's like you don't allow yourself to question it. And I think having the freedom to explore is really important. So yeah, it sounds like you just didn't let yourself explore that until later in your life.
Mm-hmm.
What was that like when you finally did start exploring that?
Terrifying.
Yeah.
Like totally scary.
Why was it scary?
I mean, it felt natural, but at the same time, my inner critic is like so loud, and you know, I questioned my decisions, whether they were intuitive or like whether I was just acting out, you know, like doing something for attention, because these are the narratives that had been like fed to me, like
totally,
oh, like you're just a lesbian in college, or you know, like all this shit, or like oh, like it's just a phase, or you know, it's just trendy.
Yeah, if you're too young, they're like, oh, it's not real, it's just a phase. But if you're older, it's like I don't know, it's not fair.
Yeah.
What do you identify as now? Like what conclusion have you come to in your exploring, if any?
Yeah. Right.
It's a journey.
Right. Today, I could tell you, because it changes every day. Today I'm like
sorry. I want to talk about that more. Like it can change. You're allowed to change. Like people don't really consider that.
I think that was also something that was terrifying to me too, is like, oh, if I want to accept this as part of my identity, like, am I, if I want to accept this as part of my identity, like I have to be 110% sure because like I can't go back on it,
Oh my God. Learn
you
like
know?
just having the freedom to change your mind is so revolutionary. It's something like I
Yeah.
recently started trying to be okay with. Like it's so
Yeah.
fucked up. But and so I
Yeah.
interrupted you earlier.
Oh, no, that's okay. Well, you asked me about like what I identify. I'm like, what do I identify as today? For the past like year or so, I being bisexual has felt like a good term to describe my queer sexuality or just being queer. I mean,
Yeah.
honestly, queer is like such a nice word because it means so many things to so many people. And my gender identity, I mean, non-binary has felt like the most comfortable. Um,
Yeah, you don't need to elaborate. I don't want to label you or anything. Like
yeah. I mean, I felt like I honestly like tomboy is like the most comfortable for me, like my
Yeah.
whole life.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Did you feel pretty like comfortable in your identity now? Or how's that going?
I do. It's nice to like live in a place with such a robust queer community. And like I have so many non-binary friends now, which I didn't have any non-binary friends in Richmond actually, and just a handful of queer
Yeah.
friends. So my community seems so I feel very supported.
That's good. I'm glad you're
Yeah.
supportive. Like having a community is really important.
Hmm.
So when you were in Virginia with Sam, and then he passed and you moved to Oakland, I imagine your mental health was really fragile at the time. Like what was
Super
going on
fragile.
when you were moving to California?
My mental health was super fragile in the van, and I didn't quite understand how fragile it would be. I was pretty like all over the place, like ecstatic 1 hour, super grief stricken, next super super anxious. By the time I made it to California, I was super anxious, like actually the whole time, honestly, because it's like, where am I going to drive? Like, am I going to run out of gas? Am I going to run out of money? What am I going to eat? What am I going to do next? Like, I'm the one making all the decisions, which is so rad in
Yeah,
the
I
one
was gonna
hand.
say it's so empowering. Like that's kind of what I loved about motorcycle culture is that it is very like fly by the seat of your pants, like,
Yes.
and you learn just how capable you are.
Yeah, absolutely. There were moments that like totally proved that to me. And then at the same time, like, it was exhausting to be that anxious and like that in control. Like I'm the only person looking out for myself.
Yeah.
If anything, like I have to like weigh so many things when I make any turn on any road. Like, am I going to run out of cell service? Is it going to be a road that I can drive on? Is the weather okay? Am I going to be too cold? Is there going to be a place for me to stay? Will there be gas? Like, will it be
Yeah.
safe?
How long did that trip take from Virginia to California?
It took me 5 months,
5
4 months,
months?
4 months, 4 months. Yeah.
Okay, so this was like a major road trip for you. Like you,
Huge. Yeah. And I didn't
wow.
have a destination in mind. I was just kind of
Okay.
like going. Yeah. And I didn't have a community, like I was alone. I had really just like extricated myself from my life as I knew it.
Wow. How like I don't know. How did you survive? Like,
I mean, though,
do you think you were using it as like a distraction?
the trip,
Yeah, or just like you talk about the emergencies that would pop up with gas and stuff. I know for me, I kind of tend to latch on. Like I'm really good in emergency situations because it's something present, it's something tangible, like it's a problem that I can solve. Whereas like my emotional problems, it's not so easy. So like I would much rather face like an emergency, on the road than deal with
hmm
my emotional.
yeah, a logical, like a logistics problem. Easy.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good point. I've never really thought about it that way. I'm sure it was a distraction, but like my emotional state like really caught up with me, and that's when I like started to relapse, and developed bulimia actually when I was in the van.
Well, when you emailed me, you said you were experiencing like a bulimia relapse, and we haven't really talked about eating disorders at all. or
Yeah.
mental health, really. And so, what was going on when you did relapse? That's such a dumb question. Like, what wasn't going on?
I mean, I was so anxious. I was just so anxious, and I was so sick of feeling so sad. And for me, like, to calm the anxiety, like, I would binge eat, immediately feel guilty, make myself purge.
Hmm.
Um,
It's like a release, you know.
Such a release. Yeah.
It
And
feels
like,
like all the negative emotions just like draining out of your body.
exactly. And it also, at that point in time, I felt kind of spiritual too. Like, I just
Mm.
really wanted to release like my grief and like former self and former life. Like, if I could have thrown up that part of my spirit, like, I would have.
Mm. Wow. Yeah. I mean, I think there is something very spiritual about purging, like the act of purging. It's not just with bulimia, but just like I mean, it's such a charged word.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like you are expulsing all this toxic stuff from your life. You're getting rid of something that was causing you harm or weighing on you heavily, you know? It's like, yeah, that's sorry, I'm just kind of like really thinking about that now when you, because I never really thought about it as like spiritual before, but it totally is.
Yeah. And I mean, I mean, I had been alone for a long ass time at that point.
Yeah. Did you stop and see people along the way or?
I did. Yeah, I definitely did. I stopped and saw like a friend of a friend in Colorado. And then I saw, yeah, that's right. And then I saw a former classmate in Colorado, and like
Okay.
everything basically like west of that for the next like several weeks, for the next like 6 weeks, basically. I had some friends, but I was alone most of the time.
That's the kind of experience that really changes you. Like, how do you feel like it changed you now, like now that everything's said and done?
I mean, now that it's said and done, it changed me. I feel like I found this like reserve of a capability within myself. Like, I made the trip. I didn't intend to land in Los Angeles or California, but I like survived. And part of that capability is like knowing when to ask for help. And
Mm.
like, I realized that it became very apparent once I got to California that I really needed a place that to stay that was an actual house that was
Yeah.
safe and stable. And I reached back out to my therapist.
Okay, I was gonna ask you about therapy this whole time, but like, were you in therapy like throughout your trip?
No.
Oh no, okay.
Um
I keep forgetting that we didn't always have teletherapy. Like in my mind, it's like, oh yeah, they could just like do therapy on the trip, but like no, we used to have a
no,
therapist that we went and saw in person.
I know. Yeah, so when I left Virginia, like I broke up with my therapist basically, who I'd been seeing for a year at that point. She was very helpful, and we processed like a lot of grief together
That's
in
good.
the months leading up to when I left. But yeah, I didn't have any mental health support.
Kind of had to like be there for yourself or collapse. Like the only other option is just like,
Yeah,
you know,
exactly. I mean, actually, let me take that back. My dog, shout out to my dog for being my mental health support.
love a dad.
Not my dad, my dog.
Oh, I was like, that took a turn.
Yeah, no, not my dad. My dog, my pet has kept me alive. Honestly, my pet has kept my mental health above like critical,
Yeah.
or at least has like helped pull me out of like that critical stage, because like anytime like that I have suicidal thoughts or like
Hmm.
thoughts of self-harm, I can almost every time convince myself against it, because I'm like, well, what happened to Banshee?
You have this little baby staring up at you who's depending on you. You're their whole world, and
Exactly.
it's Yeah, I would definitely not be alive if it weren't for my cats. Like
Yeah.
it's real.
Yeah. And so yeah, dog was with me at the entire van trip, and like that was helpful. And it's helpful too. Like she gave me a reason to like go for a walk, like explore some of the things, like the amazing nature that I had like intended to explore until like, like my mental health just like plummeted, and I just didn't have the bandwidth to actually like go there. And so like, yeah, I don't know, she's definitely been a savior.
What was your favorite place that you saw on your way to California?
It's a good question.
Or do you have like a memory that you cherish?
hmm, we went swimming in Lake Michigan in October, which was cool.
I grew up by Lake Michigan.
Oh,
It gets
cool.
really
It's
fucking cold.
cold. Yeah.
Yeah.
That I cherish that memory a lot because that really felt like my most like, that was in the beginning of the trip, and like, yeah, I just remember being like, I like, this is a huge lake. Maybe it's kind of a warm day. Like, I want to swim in it. And I was like, I'm gonna do that, even though it's like super painful, and and it's like, it's pretty simple to like swim if you know how to swim, obviously.
Yeah.
It's pretty simple to like go swim in like a cold lake. You just go in
But
and
the
get out.
point is, like, no one really thinks about that. No one like gives themselves permission to do stuff like that.
Yeah,
But you're like, oh my God, like I
I
can do
can.
whatever I want.
Yeah,
Well, you know what I mean.
exactly. Yeah.
So by the time you ended the trip, like, would you say, how would you say that you were different?
Well, I had like relapsed into eating disorder behaviors.
Yeah.
So that was different.
So wait, oh, sorry. So when you got to California, you were relapsed in your eating disorder. You were needing help, you were saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like what led to you ultimately asking for help and how did that come about?
I didn't ask for help for several months. I did find a place to stay, which feels like help. I mean, I was able to help myself in that way. So I
Yeah.
found like a room to rent, and I found a job, and like, but then the pandemic hit,
Yeah.
and I didn't reach back out to like professional service, mental health services until I didn't reach back out to my therapist until a couple weeks into the pandemic, when I was like, stuck in my house. Things were getting really bad in my eating disorder. Things were really tense between me and my roommate.
Yeah.
It's been hell. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel you.
Yeah, it's just really full of anxiety. I have been like drinking at night, like drinking whiskey at night, like in my room, just like really kind of like locked in my own head.
It's like spiraling.
Exactly. Was really spiraling out of control. And eventually, I can't remember
Like if something led to like you getting out of that, like sometimes it just passes.
sometimes it does pass. I can't remember if there's like a specific moment that I was like, I should need to reach out to my therapist. But I do know like that was around March. So it was the 1 year anniversary of Sam's death. I'm sure that had something to do with it. Like,
Oh, totally.
experiencing that, and like, I mean, I just think there's like some moments of clarity where for me I would just walk out of the bathroom and with my throat just like burning and just be like, wait, what is going on? Or like wake up super hungover.
Did you ever like wake up to food that you ordered and forgot about and then you passed out?
No.
When I was drinking and bulimic at the same time, it's truly hell. It truly is. Like
Yeah.
I would get super drunk and order food and then pass out eating it and like wake up and be like, "Oh my God, I forgot to." My main concern was that I forgot to purge. Like that's so fucked
Yeah.
up. It's no way to live.
Yeah. It's no way to live. No, I mean, like there was no food delivery, and like,
Well, that's probably a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you ultimately contacted your therapist again and
Yeah.
started seeing her.
Yeah. And I think that it was possible to do that because of the pandemic. because of
Mm.
Zoom.
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden, like, mental health services like could be provided. Telehealth was a thing,
Yeah.
like, was a legit thing.
It sucks that it took that.
I know. And like at the time, like I hadn't been I'd only lived like over here for couple of months. So I still had like all of my Virginia Medicare.
Nice.
So it was still really accessible. I mean,
It
it
worked
was
out.
easy. It was easy. It has not been so easy since.
Yeah. Well, so what's
Really.
wrapping up? Like, I mean, I don't know. I
Yeah.
feel like there's so much still
There's so much
to share. Like, you've gone
Yeah.
through so much since I last saw you, and it's been
Yeah.
a really rough ride. I asked you at the beginning how you're doing, like, in this moment, and I don't remember what you answered. Like, I don't think
I answered about Sam. I answered in
Yeah.
response to my grief with Sam. But in this moment, like one of the things that it has been a really rough ride since I met you.
I know. It's like a different lifetime,
Yeah,
different
totally.
person.
Yeah. But like transformation is inevitably going to be painful. And one of the things that I've really cherished over the past year has been like the power of vulnerability and like sharing
Oh
my
my God, yeah.
story with strangers that I met on the internet in support groups, like
Yes.
random people. Everyone asks like, why did you come out here? And sometimes I don't tell the full story.
How can you?
It's not worth it, but yeah.
When did you start being vulnerable with people online?
Over the summer.
Okay. Well, did anything lead up to that, or?
My therapist suggested that I find an online support group and do like group therapy. Try that out.
Nice.
And it really changed my life.
How did you find the group? Was it like through your therapist, or?
She sent me a couple of links, but I used ANAD. ANAD runs a couple of Zoom support groups. And then I also searched around in the Bay Area specifically for eating disorder support groups online and found this one called Communities of Healing or Project Heal. And they're just like really badass. I definitely shopped around.
Well,
There's like meetings with like people, like 20 people. So awkward. They're like, my name's Adele.
Yeah.
And it took me so many months to really open up, but like it's a practice I really cherish now.
And vulnerability is just so radical and like so healing. So how do you practice vulnerability like on a daily basis, would you say?
Ooh, good question.
I'm full of those sometimes.
Yeah. On a daily basis. I'm like looking in the mirror.
Ask yourself. No, seriously. Okay, honestly though, looking in the mirror is so fucking hard. Can we just talk about that? Like, if you have an eating disorder, like from the moment the day begins and I look at myself in the mirror, it's like, oh my God, I can't do this. Like, I can't be in this body. And it's just like, you have to be vulnerable with yourself, kind of.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It's really hard.
Yeah, it is really hard. Yeah, on a day-to-day basis, like maybe that is the most courageous thing that I do every day. But also like definitely there's a level of vulnerability. On a good day, I'm like, I can question like why looking in the mirror is so hard.
And it's a process. Like, you have gone through so much, and this is very early on in your journey, and you're in recovery for multiple things, and it's going to be a long time. But I mean, it's like you said, transformation is painful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do you feel like you're still in the process of like transforming into the next stage of your life, or?
Oh my God, every day. Yeah. But it's like though, it's endless work.
Yeah.
It will never end. And I feel okay with that. I used to think that like I turned 30 last year. I turned 31 like yesterday, actually.
Oh my God. Oh, fuck.
Yeah.
I literally was writing notes about stuff to bring up with you, and the very first note was birthday, because I noticed it was your birthday yesterday. Oh my God. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Yeah, I love you, and I'm so happy you're here.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I'm surprised that I'm 31. Like, on the one hand, I'm like, I made it. Okay. Like, I made it 31. I really didn't think I was going to make it this old.
Yeah.
Just like from so many things.
Okay, let me ask you this. How have you transformed in the last year?
I mean,
What are some ways you've transformed in the last year that you're proud of?
Hmm.
To end it on like a positive note.
Yeah. I mean, I feel really proud of joining a recovery support group. I really feel really proud of like using that word to describe myself as in
Recovery?
recovery. Yeah. I mean, like, because for me, like, to say that I'm in recovery means that I have overcome the shame of like saying that I have a problem.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, I mean, I love my friends in my support group so much. That's like been a huge transformation for me.
Just asking for help and like letting yourself be supported.
Letting myself be supported and be seen and supporting back. It's not like
Mm.
it's not like I have something super intense to talk about every time. But
Yeah.
like knowing that part of like being in the support group is showing up to support other people. That's huge.
Totally. What are some ways you like to be supported when you're going through a really rough time?
Yeah. One of the best people have asked me this before in terms of grief, and one of the best ways to that I felt supported in grief was when they would like straight up ask me like how I was feeling, what did that make me feel like to
Mm.
experience that loss. Yes, it's nice to ask me like what are things that I loved about Sam or like remember about him. That's important too.
Yeah.
The worst thing for me was when people would ignore it.
Or skirt around it, like be afraid of it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Uh, I just want to say, like, you're so strong, and you are doing your best in the moment and just shining through your pain. And,
Mm,
you're imperfect, and that's beautiful. You're struggling and you are vulnerable, and like, that's so important. And I wish more people could. It takes a lot of work to be vulnerable, like, to reach that point where you're okay with being vulnerable. And I'm really proud of you
yeah.
for getting there.
Thank you. I'm
Yeah.
really proud of you for running this podcast and
Thanks.
asking such cool questions. And it's such a resource for me.
Thank you. That means a lot. Yeah, I
Yeah.
feel like I'd go crazy if I couldn't talk about it. And
Yeah.
yeah, thanks. Is there anything else you wanted to add, or resources you wanted to drop, or
Ooh.
shout outs? I don't know.
I don't know. I just feel like I just don't know that much.
Oh my God, that's gonna be the quote. I just don't know that much.
Yeah, exactly.
Mood.
I just don't know
But
that
yeah, I'll
much.
definitely link some of the support groups in the show notes, because like literally the last episode I was saying like, oh my God, I didn't know free support groups for eating disorders were a thing.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that's
Yeah.
super important.
Yeah. ANAT. I don't know what that stands for. I should
I
maybe.
don't either.
And community Project Heal.
Hmm.
Super,
Project Heal.
super important.
Nice. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
I will let you go now.
Okay.
Thank you so much for being here. It's so good to catch up with you. There's like so
I
many more
know.
questions I want to ask you that I'll have
I
to.
know.
We should just like chat sometime on the phone.
Absolutely. I would love that
We'll ride motorcycles again together someday.
someday.
Do you have a
Yeah.
motorcycle now?
No.
No. Okay, me neither.
Yeah. I sold mine when I moved out from Virginia.
Same.
And I worked for that electric moped place, but
Yeah, you were
they
telling me
laid us
that.
off because they closed the shop in San
You
Francisco.
know what? It's just not the time right now.
It was
It's
not the
not the
time. Also,
time.
not gonna lie, those bikes are cute, but like you have like a 20-mile range
Yeah.
before you have to charge it again.
I was gonna like I wanted you were like we can come and ride them, and I was like yeah, but on the inside I was like what are we gonna do? Are we gonna ride down the alley? Like
Yeah,
what is
you
there
can
to
ride around.
do?
They are really awesome to ride around the city, but like
Okay.
not fun to ride on. I mean, you can't ride on the freeway or anything like
You
that.
mean I
They're
can't ride
tiny.
across the country on a rad power
Um,
bike?
yeah, no, I don't think so. You're
Damn.
gonna have to do a lot of pedaling, or it'll take you a long
I
time.
was about to make a joke about calories burning, and I was just like, no, I can't. It's not the time.
It could be. I do appreciate like the every now and then like a shit post, like
Oh, hell
ED
yeah.
related humor meme. It's just
Oh my God. I follow so many eating disorder meme accounts. I interviewed a girl from China who runs like thousands of followers meme account.
so
I will
cool.
send it to you. Yeah. And I'll send
Okay.
you the episode. I'll send you the account. It's great.
Okay.
how did we get here? I don't know. But yeah, I love you. This is great.
Love you
And
too.
thank you so much for your time
Yeah.
and just being vulnerable with me and the listeners.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Have a good
Thanks
night.
for having this podcast. Bye.
Bye. Hey guys, thanks for listening to this episode of Pickles and Vodka. If you could relate to anything we talked about, you can follow the podcast at Pickles and Vodka Podcast on Instagram, on Facebook by typing in Pickles and Vodka Podcast. You can also email me at picklesandvodkapodcast@gmail.com if you have any stories or if you just want to say hi. Thanks again for listening, and I hope you guys have a wonderful week. Stay safe.